Hey, this is Tony from the Cold Case Project, where we focus on unsolved cases across the United States. Our mission is to bring attention to these unresolved mysteries that need your help. All the information we cover in these cases is readily available on the internet, but we rewrite and repurpose it for the purpose of these videos. Our goal is to spread the word about the thousands of unsolved cold cases still out there. Thank you for watching. If you want to help shed light on these cases, make sure to like and subscribe for more content. Your support can make a difference.
The small town of Morenci, Arizona, became the center of a perplexing mystery on the night of June 8, 2002, when 35-year-old Jeffrey Colden vanished without a trace. Following a domestic dispute with his fiancée, Jeffrey departed their residence at approximately 10:00 p.m. His immediate destination was the local Circle K convenience store, where he purchased gasoline and beer. A curious detail that emerged later was the discovery of Jeffrey's wallet, containing his identification, and his treasured heirloom wristwatch in his other vehicle. This raised an immediate question: how did Jeffrey pay for his purchases at the Circle K that night if his wallet was elsewhere? After his stop at the store, the last confirmed sighting of Jeffrey placed him driving his vehicle approximately half a mile south of Morenci on Reservation Road, a stretch of highway that runs through an area known locally as the Morenci Corrals. From this point onward, Jeffrey Colden seemingly disappeared into thin air, never to be heard from again by his loved ones. The following day brought a disturbing discovery that intensified the concerns surrounding Jeffrey's well-being. His blue 1985 Chevrolet CK-1500 pickup truck, bearing Arizona license plates, was found submerged in the San Francisco River. The location of the submerged vehicle was along the same route where Jeffrey had last been seen driving the previous night. Despite the recovery of his truck from the river, there was no sign of Jeffrey at the scene. Authorities, after a thorough examination of the area and the condition of the vehicle, concluded that it was highly unlikely that Jeffrey had accidentally drowned there. The circumstances did not align with a typical fatal vehicle accident. Adding a layer of complexity to the investigation was the fact that Jeffrey's fiancée was pregnant with their daughter at the time of his disappearance. This significant life event prompted investigators to explore the theory that Jeffrey may have intentionally walked away from his life to avoid the responsibilities of impending fatherhood. However, this hypothesis was met with strong opposition from Jeffrey's family and close friends. They painted a picture of a man who was eagerly anticipating the arrival of his child. Furthermore, they emphasized Jeffrey's deep enthusiasm for the upcoming elk hunting season, a cherished annual activity that they believed he would never willingly miss. Their conviction that Jeffrey would not have abandoned his fiancée and unborn daughter was further supported by the fact that he had left his personal checkbook and approximately $200 in cash behind at their home. Additionally, there has been no subsequent activity on Jeffrey's bank account since his disappearance, suggesting an unplanned and involuntary departure. A particularly unsettling and potentially significant detail that surfaced during the investigation was the timing of Jeffrey's disappearance. June 8, 2002, the night he vanished, also marked the first anniversary of his fiancée's divorce from her former husband. According to reports from those who knew Jeffrey, he harbored a distinct fear of this man, introducing the possibility of external factors or individuals playing a role in his sudden absence. This element of fear added a sinister undertone to the already perplexing circumstances. Jeffrey Colden had previously established a life in Tucson, Arizona, before relocating to Morenci. Given the unusual and troubling circumstances surrounding his vanishing, the authorities officially classified his disappearance as suspicious, acknowledging that the available evidence did not support a simple explanation of a voluntary departure or accidental death. The case of Jeffrey Colden remains an open and unsolved mystery, a source of ongoing anguish for his family and friends who continue to seek answers and closure. The confluence of the argument, the missing wallet, the submerged truck, the anticipation of fatherhood and elk hunting, the left-behind cash and checkbook, and the reported fear of his fiancée's ex-husband creates a complex puzzle with no clear resolution. Anyone who may have information, no matter how seemingly insignificant, regarding the disappearance of Jeffrey Colden is urged to contact the Greenlee County Sheriff's Office in Arizona. The morning of November 4, 1991, in Chandler, Arizona, began like any other for 23-year-old Lisa Jameson. She had just completed her overnight shift at the electronics business where she worked. As the sun began to rise, Lisa was last seen by a coworker in the vicinity of McQueen Road and Chandler Boulevard. Little did anyone know, this would be the final time Lisa was ever seen. She vanished without a trace, leaving behind a web of unanswered questions and a family desperate for answers. In the days leading up to her disappearance, Lisa held a significant secret close to her heart. She had recently discovered that she was pregnant with her second child, a prospect that filled her with joy. However, this happiness was tinged with nervousness about sharing the news with her husband, Alan. They had previously discussed expanding their family, and Alan had expressed his desire not to have any more children. Whether Lisa ever had the opportunity to share her pregnancy with Alan remains unknown, lost to the mystery of her disappearance. Lisa was married to Alan, who was 6 years her senior and worked as a correctional officer at the Maricopa County Jail in Arizona. Alan was originally from Bolivia, where his parents still resided. Lisa, on the other hand, was a lifelong Arizona resident, deeply connected to her close-knit family, including her 5 siblings. The day before she went missing, Lisa visited her mother, Barbara, sharing her exciting news and borrowing a small amount of money. This would be the last time Barbara ever saw her youngest child. The details of Lisa's activities after leaving work that morning remain largely unknown. Whether she returned home to speak with Alan or if something else occurred is unclear. What is known is that she was scheduled to pick up her 2-year-old son, Kyle, from the babysitter later that day. When she failed to arrive, her husband, Alan, reported her missing around 5 p.m. He contacted her family and the police, initiating the search for his missing wife. Despite Lisa last being seen in Chandler, she and Alan resided in nearby Gilbert, Arizona, making the Gilbert Police Department the primary investigating agency. Initially, the police reportedly considered the possibility that Lisa had simply left on her own accord, a common assumption in missing adult cases. However, Lisa's family vehemently disagreed, a sentiment that would soon be supported by the evidence, or lack thereof, at her home. All of Lisa's personal belongings, including her clothing and credit cards, were left behind. Furthermore, there had been no activity on her bank accounts since her disappearance, strongly suggesting she had not intentionally started a new life elsewhere. The only piece of the puzzle that seemed to contradict this was the absence of her car. Nearly a month after Lisa vanished, a significant and unsettling discovery was made. Her red 1989 Pontiac Lemons was found abandoned in the parking lot of an adult bookstore named Pleasure World in Phoenix, Arizona, approximately a 30-minute drive from where she was last seen in Chandler. The car had reportedly been sitting in the parking lot for at least 10 days before it was finally towed, leading to the realization of its connection to the missing person case in Gilbert. Initial news reports consistently stated that no blood or other significant evidence related to Lisa's disappearance was found inside the vehicle. However, a blog post written by Lisa's sister painted a drastically different picture, suggesting a violent struggle had occurred within the car. According to her sister, there were signs of a violent altercation, including a broken rearview mirror, footprints on the car ceiling, a bent emergency brake arm shift, a large brown stain on the passenger side back seat, a broken red fingernail on the back floor, a broken trunk lock, and a substance resembling sand or detergent on the back seat and in the trunk. This detailed account strongly implied that something terrible had happened to Lisa inside her car. In 2004, the Gilbert Police Department announced that they would have the Department of Public Safety analyze DNA evidence from Lisa's car. If the initial reports of no evidence were accurate, this announcement would have been perplexing. The fact that DNA testing was planned suggests that there was indeed biological material found in the car that warranted further investigation. Unfortunately, no subsequent information regarding the results of this DNA testing has ever been publicly released. In the initial years following Lisa's disappearance, her family clung to the hope that she was still alive. Police questioned Alan, but he was never arrested or charged in connection with his wife's disappearance. In 1993, 2 years after Lisa went missing, Alan made the decision to move back to Bolivia, leaving their son, Kyle, in the care of Lisa's parents. Alan reportedly had minimal contact with Kyle after his departure, further distancing himself from the life he had shared with Lisa. Lisa's parents, Barbara and Frank, ultimately adopted Kyle, raising him in a loving environment surrounded by those who cherished his mother. Kyle excelled in school, was a talented basketball player, and even started his own business while still in high school. He later pursued a career as a hip-hop artist, using the name Sincerely Collins and even changing his last name to his mother's maiden name. While Alan reportedly returned to the United States at some point, remarried, and settled in Kansas, it appears that Kyle never re-established a relationship with his father. There is also no indication that Alan ever actively participated in searches for Lisa or made inquiries about the status of her case. The absence of his mother deeply impacted Kyle's life, shaping his experiences and his art. In his mid-20s, he delved deeper into the details of his mother's case, a process he described as emotionally challenging. While he yearned for closure, it remained elusive. Kyle firmly believes that foul play was involved in his mother's disappearance and stated in a 2022 interview that he has a strong suspicion of who was responsible. Lisa's family has never given up their pursuit of justice. They continue to seek answers and hope that the person responsible for Lisa's disappearance will be held accountable. On the 30th anniversary of Lisa's disappearance in 2021, the Gilbert Police Department issued a statement affirming that the case remains active and that every lead is investigated. They expressed hope that renewed media attention might jog someone's memory and lead to new information. The police also stated that there were no current persons of interest identified in the case. Lisa's family, however, believes she was murdered and hopes for the prosecution of those responsible to finally bring them closure. Today, Kyle continues his career as an artist, feeling his mother's presence in his life every day. Her memory influences his music, and he sees echoes of her in his own daughter, carrying on the love his mother gave him while still seeking the answers to her disappearance. Lisa Jameson, a black woman with brown hair and brown eyes, was 5 feet 6 inches tall and weighed approximately 122 pounds at the time of her disappearance. She was last seen wearing a pink shirt, jeans, white shoes, a silver rope necklace, and a silver herringbone necklace. She was 23 years old when she went missing and would be 53 years old today. Anyone with information regarding the disappearance of Lisa Jameson is urged to contact the Gilbert Police Department. The disappearance of 2 young sisters, Cynthia Ardina Lesley, 15 years old, and Jackie Lynn Lesley, 13 years old, from their hometown of Mesa, Arizona, on July 31, 1974, remains a deeply unsettling and unsolved case. The details surrounding their vanishing, particularly the short distance they intended to travel, amplify the mystery and the enduring pain for their family and community. Cynthia was described as being approximately 5 feet 6 inches tall and weighing around 109 pounds. She had a distinctive half-inch mole on the outer side of her right armpit, wore glasses due to impaired vision, and had pierced ears. Her younger sister, Jackie, was 5 feet 4 inches tall and weighed about 110 pounds. Jackie had a mole on her right cheekbone and also had pierced ears. Both sisters shared brown hair and blue eyes. On that fateful day, Cynthia and Jackie were last seen walking towards a friend's home, a mere 3 blocks away from their residence within the Desert Shores Mobile Home Park in East Mesa. This mobile home park was to become the backdrop for a tragedy that continues to baffle investigators. The family had only recently moved to this location from Page, Arizona, approximately a month prior, to provide better access to medical care for their father, who was suffering from terminal cancer. This detail underscores the difficult circumstances the family was already facing when the girls disappeared. Despite the incredibly short distance of their intended walk, neither Cynthia nor Jackie ever reached their friend's house. They have not been seen or heard from since. Significantly, All of their personal belongings were left behind at their home, a strong indication that they did not plan to be away for an extended period or run away. This detail further fuels the suspicion that something unexpected and likely sinister occurred during their brief journey. Adding to the complexity of the case, the girls had informed their mother that they were going to babysit. However, their mother later learned that they had actually planned to attend a party. This discrepancy in their stated plans raises questions about who they intended to meet and the circumstances surrounding their departure. Furthermore, it was revealed that their father had specifically instructed Cynthia to avoid contact with an unidentified teenage boy. It is speculated that Cynthia may have defied her father's wishes and intended to meet this boy that evening. This element of a forbidden meeting adds another layer of potential risk to their movements. In the ensuing investigation, authorities interviewed numerous teenagers who had been at the party the sisters reportedly planned to attend. These interviews yielded conflicting testimonies, a common and frustrating obstacle in missing persons cases. Some teenagers stated that they did see Cynthia and Jackie at the party, while others were adamant that the sisters never arrived. These contradictory accounts created significant challenges for investigators trying to establish a reliable timeline of the girls' last known movements. Did they make it to the party? If so, what happened to them there? If not, what occurred during their short walk within the confines of their own neighborhood? In the weeks following the girls' disappearance, the local landscape became the focus of intense searching. Family members and sheriff's deputies scoured the orange groves and cotton fields that were characteristic of East Mesa at the time. It is a poignant reminder of the area's transformation that these agricultural lands have since been developed into residential areas, apartment complexes, commercial centers, and entertainment venues. The fact that the intended destination was only 3 blocks away within the mobile home park strongly suggests that the sisters were likely on foot and did not intend to travel a significant distance. This makes the possibility of a random encounter or an incident within that small area a key focus of speculation. The conflicting accounts from the party attendees are particularly significant. If some individuals saw the girls at the party, it implies they arrived safely at their initial destination. What happened after that? Why would they then vanish without a trace, leaving behind all their belongings at home? Conversely, if others at the party claim they never saw the sisters, it suggests that something occurred during their short walk. Could they have encountered someone? Did they deviate from their planned route? Was there an incident within the mobile home park itself? The close-knit nature often associated with trailer park communities adds another layer of intrigue. It seems plausible that residents might have observed something, even inadvertently, that could be crucial to the investigation. The fact that the girls were walking during daylight hours further suggests that there might have been potential witnesses. Tragically, the girls' father, who was already gravely ill with terminal cancer, passed away just a few months after his daughters disappeared. The family had moved to the Desert Shores Mobile Home Park specifically to be closer to the hospital for his care. Their mother firmly believed that Cynthia and Jackie, who were known to be very devoted to their father, would never have willingly left him during such a critical time. This conviction underscores the unnatural and likely involuntary nature of their disappearance. Years passed, and the girl's mother eventually remarried. In 1999, she moved to Kingman, Arizona, to be closer to her eldest daughter, who resided in Nevada. This move represents the long passage of time and the enduring impact of this unresolved tragedy on the family's lives. The disappearance of Cynthia and Jackie Lesley remains an active cold case, with foul play strongly suspected by authorities. However, the investigation has been hampered by the limited available evidence and the conflicting testimonies from the time. The mystery of what happened to these 2 young sisters during a seemingly ordinary walk in their own neighborhood over 4 decades ago continues to be a source of profound sadness and unanswered questions in Mesa, Arizona. The hope remains that someday, new information will emerge that can finally bring closure to this heartbreaking case and provide answers to a community that has never forgotten Cynthia and Jackie Lesley. The life of Donna Joumpson, a young woman residing in Chandler, Arizona, was tragically intertwined with domestic turmoil, culminating in her mysterious disappearance on July 5, 1987. This date held significant weight as it was the day Donna had planned to finally separate from her husband, Kevin Dale Joumpson. Their residence, located in the 900 block of West Gary Drive, near the intersection of Alma School Road and Ray Road, had become a battleground of escalating conflict. 2 days prior to her disappearance, on July 3, Donna confided in a friend, revealing visible signs of abuse. Her lip was split, and bruises marked her body, injuries she attributed to Kevin's violent outbursts. During this meeting, Donna shared her resolute decision to leave Kevin. Her plan was to take their 2 young toddler sons and drive to her parents' home in Enumclaw, Washington, a place where she and Kevin had previously lived. This decision was not impulsive. Donna had already reached out to her father, seeking refuge from the constant violent arguments and physical abuse she endured at the hands of Kevin. Her father readily agreed to welcome her and her children back home. On the day she vanished, July 5, Donna attended a friend's barbecue. Her intention was to return to her blue Chevrolet Chevelle, pack clothes for herself and her sons, and then rejoin the barbecue with her children, planning to spend the night at her friend's house before embarking on the drive to Washington the following day. Tragically, Donna never returned to her friend's home, and she has not been seen or heard from since that fateful day. The relationship between Donna and Kevin, which began in high school, was described by those close to them as inherently toxic. Arguments frequently spiraled into violence, painting a disturbing picture of their life together. Donna's sister had witnessed Kevin physically assault and choke her, and in a chilling account, Donna's mother had once reported to the police that Kevin had attempted to drown Donna in a ditch after she revealed her pregnancy. Despite this documented history of abuse, Donna and Kevin married in 1985, a year after the birth of their first son. Their family expanded in January 1986 with the arrival of their second child. Shortly after Christmas that year, the family relocated to Arizona. However, the move did not bring an end to Kevin's abusive behavior. Donna confided in a friend that Kevin had raped her and threatened her life. Within months of this horrific incident, Donna made the firm decision to move back to Washington, seeking safety and a new beginning for herself and her children. Kevin's account of Donna's departure differed significantly from the reality known to Donna's friends and family. He claimed that his wife had packed all her belongings before leaving and that he had given her all their available cash, approximately $1,100, to facilitate her move. He stated that he last saw her when she left to visit a friend in Mesa, Arizona, that evening. According to Kevin, when he awoke the following morning, Donna was not home, but her Chevrolet Chevelle had been meticulously cleaned and returned to its usual spot under the carport. Kevin also asserted that Donna had left him on several occasions in the past, although she had never been gone for more than a few days. The subsequent investigation revealed a stark contrast to Kevin's narrative. Authorities discovered that Donna had left behind all her personal possessions and, most significantly, her 2 young children. Adding to the suspicion surrounding Kevin's actions, he pawned Donna's jewelry after her disappearance. When Donna failed to arrive in Washington within 5 days, her concerned father reported her missing. Kevin himself never notified the police about his wife's disappearance, a significant omission that raised immediate red flags. Furthermore, he failed a polygraph examination concerning Donna's case. While Kevin suggested that Donna wanted to leave Arizona due to her dislike of the weather and her inability to find employment in her chosen field of banking, Donna had explicitly told others that she was leaving to escape Kevin's violence. A crucial piece of evidence was the state of Donna's Chevrolet Chevelle. When police examined the vehicle, they found that it had been thoroughly cleaned and washed. This was particularly suspicious because Donna had recently used the car during the 4th of July weekend, going to the river with a friend and her family, and the car had been quite dirty upon their return. When questioned about who had cleaned the car and why, Kevin claimed he had no knowledge of it. Based on the overwhelming circumstances, police concluded that Donna Joumpson had likely been murdered and that her Chevelle had potentially been used to transport her body. However, despite the strong suspicion pointing towards Kevin, the prosecutor's office initially declined to press charges, citing insufficient evidence at the time. Following this decision, Kevin moved back to Washington state with his and Donna's children. Notably, he never contacted the Arizona police to inquire about the status of his missing wife's case. The investigation took a significant turn in September 2017 when, years after Donna's disappearance, Kevin Dale Joumpson was finally charged with second-degree murder in connection with her death. The trial brought forth the long history of abuse and the suspicious circumstances surrounding Donna's vanishing. However, after the prosecution presented its case, Kevin's defense attorneys requested a directed verdict for acquittal. Their argument centered on the assertion that the police had focused solely on the theory that Kevin had murdered Donna, neglecting to thoroughly investigate other potential explanations for her disappearance. The defense further contended that the evidence presented was insufficient to prove Kevin's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. In a controversial decision, the judge granted the defense's motion and directed the acquittal of Kevin Joumpson. Due to the legal principle of double jeopardy, Kevin cannot be tried again for Donna's murder. Despite the acquittal, the circumstances surrounding Donna Joumpson's disappearance strongly suggest foul play. The documented history of severe domestic abuse, Donna's clear intentions to leave Kevin, the suspicious cleaning of her car, Kevin's failure to report her missing and his failed lie detector test all paint a disturbing picture. While the legal avenues for prosecution may have been exhausted, the mystery of what truly happened to Donna Joumpson on that fateful day in July 1987 continues to linger, a stark reminder of the tragic consequences of domestic violence and the enduring quest for justice for those who have been silenced. The vast and awe-inspiring landscapes of Grand Canyon National Park in Arizona became the last known location of 21-year-old Drake Kramer, who was last seen on the South Rim near the Bright Angel Lodge on February 1, 2015. Drake's disappearance began with a sudden departure from his home in Texas. He communicated his journey to his loved ones through text messages, indicating that he had first driven to California before arriving at the Grand Canyon, a place he had visited several times in the past. His final text message conveyed a sense of peace and a desire for spiritual connection, stating that he loved everyone and needed to be back with Mother Earth and set his soul free. Drake checked into the Bright Angel Lodge on January 31, 2015, and checked out the following day. When he failed to make contact, a concerned relative reported him missing on February 2, 2015, initiating a search that would span hundreds of square miles of challenging terrain. At the time of his disappearance, Drake was employed at a Lowe's store, demonstrating his work ethic and responsibility. Academically, he was a bright and dedicated student. He had earned an associate's degree from Northwest Vista College, a community college known for its beautiful campus, and had recently transferred to the University of Texas at San Antonio to pursue his passion for geology. His father described him as a frugal individual, a hard worker, and a good student with a deep appreciation for the natural world. This love for nature, particularly geology, made the Grand Canyon a significant and meaningful place for him, offering unparalleled opportunities to study rock formations and geological processes. Despite the seemingly concerning nature of his last text message, Drake's family maintained that he had appeared to be in good spirits leading up to his trip. They found it uncharacteristic of him to disappear without further communication, especially given his close ties and his generally positive outlook. While some might interpret his final text as indicative of suicidal ideation, his family and others who knew him well believed it more likely expressed a need for solitude and a deep connection with nature, a sentiment often felt by those who find solace and inspiration in the outdoors. His message of love for everyone further supported this interpretation in their eyes. The search for Drake Kramer was extensive and challenging, covering nearly 300 square miles of the south rim of the Grand Canyon. This area, while breathtakingly beautiful with its panoramic views and geological wonders, presents significant obstacles for search and rescue operations. The vastness of the landscape, the varied terrain, and the way colors blend together make it incredibly difficult to spot an individual, even with the aid of binoculars or aerial reconnaissance. Drake was known to sometimes wear dark clothing and a hat, further complicating visual searches. For over 6 days, park rangers and numerous search teams meticulously scoured the developed areas of the South Rim, stretching from Hermit's Rest on the west to Grandview on the east. Searchers walked countless miles along the canyon rim, explored heavily forested areas, utilized trained dog teams to aid in tracking, conducted multiple technical searches over the rim into the canyon depths, and deployed aerial reconnaissance missions to support the ground teams. Posters featuring Drake's picture and description were widely distributed throughout the South Rim in an effort to gather any potential leads. Drake was described as approximately 5 feet 7 inches tall, weighing around 140 pounds, with dark hair and blue eyes. His family also shared a particularly poignant message he had sent to his mother, which they felt further contradicted any notion of suicidal intent. "I truly love and cherish every soul I met and will meet my lifetime love, Drake Lyons Kramer." This message, filled with love and a sense of future connection, reinforced their belief that he had simply sought a period of solitude in nature. Drake was known to have visited the Grand Canyon 3 or 4 times prior to his disappearance, and there were several locations along the South Rim that were considered his favorite spots. These areas were given particular attention during the search efforts. Being a student of geology, the Grand Canyon held immense appeal for him, offering a real-world classroom of geological formations and processes. However, pinpointing his exact intended location at the time of his disappearance proved impossible. Despite the exhaustive search efforts conducted by park authorities, no physical evidence or sign of Drake Kramer was ever found. After several weeks, the active search was eventually scaled down. The National Park Service maintained an open investigation, and a silent witness line was established for anyone who might have information, urging them to call 928-638-7840. Additionally, the number 928-814-3652 was provided as a contact for those with potential leads. The disappearance of Drake Kramer remains an unsolved mystery. His family and friends continue to grapple with the uncertainty of his fate. They remember him as a bright, hard-working, and nature-loving young man who was well-liked by all who knew him. The hope for answers and some form of closure endures for those who care about Drake. The night of February 8, 2007, in Bisbee, Arizona, was shattered by a violent abduction that has left a young man missing and a community searching for answers. Julian Kirkoff, a 31-year-old resident, was last seen amidst a chaotic altercation at the Esperanza Apartments. He had been driving his mother's gold 1992 Nissan Maxima when he became embroiled in a confrontation with a group of several males, with estimates suggesting as many as 7 individuals were involved. As Julian attempted to escape the escalating situation, his vehicle collided with the rear of another car. The tense scene took a dark and decisive turn when a gunshot echoed through the apartment complex parking lot. Witnesses then reported seeing one of the assailants forcibly remove Julian from the driver's seat of his own Nissan Maxima and push him into the back seat. With Julian now held captive, one of the abductors took control of his car. Julian's gold Nissan, bearing the vehicle identification number JN1HJO1F5NT025326 and sustaining damage from the earlier collision, was then driven away from the apartments, closely followed by a dark-colored sedan. The two vehicles were seen heading south, in the direction of the Mexican border, which lay a mere 5 miles from the scene of the abduction. Eyewitnesses to this brazen act of violence immediately contacted the police. With the first calls coming in around 11:30 p.m., responding officers arrived at the Esperanza Apartments and conducted a search of the parking lot, where they discovered a single spent .380 shell casing. This piece of evidence served as a stark reminder of the violence that had transpired. Despite the immediate response and subsequent investigation, Julian Kirkoff has never been heard from again, and his gold 1992 Nissan Maxima has never been recovered. The disappearance of both the man and the vehicle only deepened the mystery surrounding his fate. Julian Kirkoff's background was not without its complexities. He had a prior criminal history, having served a year in prison for attempted aggravated driving under the influence and possession of drug paraphernalia. Additionally, he had a conviction for transporting a narcotic drug for sale. While these past offenses painted a certain picture, Julian's mother stated that he had been making an effort to stay away from drugs in the period leading up to his abduction. Nevertheless, she expressed her fear that his disappearance was somehow connected to his past involvement with narcotics. The Bisbee Police Department launched a thorough investigation into Julian's kidnapping, identifying 4 individuals as suspects in the case. These suspects were questioned by authorities. However, despite the investigation, no one has ever been formally charged in connection with Julian's abduction. Adding another layer of complication, the suspects are now believed to be residing in Mexico, potentially having crossed the border shortly after Julian's abduction. While it remains a strong possibility that Julian was also taken into Mexico, investigators have been unable to find any official record of him or his gold Nissan Maxima crossing the border. This lack of official documentation does not rule out an illegal crossing or other means of transport. At the time of his abduction, Julian Kirkoff had a girlfriend and a young son, highlighting the personal relationships he left behind. He also maintained close daily contact with his mother, making his sudden and complete silence particularly uncharacteristic. His established routine of communication with his mother further fueled the suspicion that his disappearance was not voluntary and that he was likely in danger. Given the violent nature of his abduction, the gunshot heard at the scene, and the subsequent disappearance of both Julian and his vehicle, foul play is strongly suspected in this case. Despite the efforts of law enforcement and the passage of time, the disappearance of Julian Kirkoff remains an unsolved mystery, leaving his family and friends in a state of perpetual uncertainty and grief. The hope for answers and the recovery of Julian, or at least the discovery of what happened to him, continues to drive the ongoing interest in this troubling case. Anyone with information, no matter how seemingly insignificant, is urged to contact the Bisbee Police Department. The lives of Betty Jappel and Kenneth William Miller, a couple originally hailing from McMinnville, Oregon, took a tragic and mysterious turn when they disappeared from Quartzsite, Arizona. Betty, and Kenneth, who was 73 years old at the time, had cultivated a nomadic existence, frequently embarking on extended travels in their 25-foot 1976 sports coach motor home, often accompanied by their black and silver Dodge Ram pickup truck. This transient lifestyle meant that they would often be out of contact with their respective families for months on end, making it difficult to pinpoint the precise date of their vanishing. The first tangible clue in their disappearance surfaced in mid-2006 when their motor home was discovered abandoned in a remote area near Redmond, Oregon. The discovery of the vehicle, far from where they were last known to be, raised immediate concerns about their well-being. Adding to the unsettling nature of the case, their pickup truck was later found in Montana, further scattering their belongings across state lines and deepening the mystery. The last recorded activity on Betty and Kenneth's bank accounts was traced back to June 2006, providing a loose time frame for when they may have last been alive and well. Crucially, the investigation revealed that Betty and Kenneth were last known to be in the company of a man named Gregory Allen Groundhog Cole. This association would prove to be a pivotal element in unraveling the tragic events that followed. The case took a violent turn on May 17, 2007, when Gregory Allen Cole was involved in a shooting in Quartzsite, Arizona. Cole shot a police officer multiple times. Thankfully, the officer was wearing a protective vest and survived the assault, despite being hit 7 times. At the time of this incident, Cole was already wanted on unrelated felony charges, prompting authorities to initiate a full-scale manhunt. Given that Betty and Kenneth were missing and had last been seen with Cole, law enforcement harbored serious concerns for their safety. The manhunt for Gregory Allen Cole came to a grim conclusion on May 23, 2007, when his body was discovered in the Arizona desert, approximately 20 miles from the Mexican border. Cole had died by suicide, having shot himself. A disturbing detail emerged upon the discovery of his motor home. The license plates affixed to it had been taken from Betty and Kenneth's pickup truck, a clear indication of Cole's involvement with the missing couple and their vehicles. In June 2007, investigators focused their attention on the remote area near Redmond, Oregon, where Betty and Kenneth's motor home had been found the previous year. Their search yielded a heartbreaking discovery. The body of Kenneth William Miller was found buried in a shallow grave. This confirmed the worst fears of his family and authorities, establishing a direct link between Cole and the couple's disappearance. However, despite the discovery of Kenneth's remains, there was no sign of Betty Jappel. She has never been heard from again since she vanished with Kenneth. Betty and Kenneth, though never formally married, had shared a deep and enduring relationship for approximately 30 years prior to their disappearance. Their long-term commitment underscored the unusual circumstances of their vanishing together. Based on the evidence gathered, authorities concluded that Gregory Allen Cole was likely responsible for the murders of both Kenneth William Miller and Betty Jappel. While Kenneth's remains were recovered, the search for Betty's body continues. Her case remains an open and unsolved missing person investigation. Law enforcement agencies in both Oregon and Arizona are actively involved in the ongoing efforts to locate Betty and bring closure to this tragic case. Anyone with information, no matter how seemingly insignificant, regarding the disappearance of Betty Jappel or the circumstances surrounding the deaths of Betty Jappel and Kenneth William Miller, is urged to contact the Quartzsite, Arizona Police Department or the McMinnville, Oregon Police Department. In the spring of 1994, Rene Leia embarked on a journey from his home in Mexico to Mesa, Arizona, arriving on April 21 to visit his mother. His presence in the United States was facilitated by a medical visa, allowing him to undergo necessary medical testing. This trip held the promise of addressing potential health concerns and reuniting with family. The day following his arrival at his mother's residence in Mesa, Rene informed her of his intention to take a walk. As he was unfamiliar with the surrounding neighborhood, this detail would later become significant. When Rene did not return after a reasonable amount of time, his mother grew increasingly worried. By 7:40 p.m. that same day, her concern had escalated to the point where she contacted the authorities and reported her son missing. The unfamiliarity of the area amplified the urgency of the situation, as the risk of Rene becoming lost or disoriented seemed high. The timeline of Rene's movements took an unexpected turn in the early hours of April 23. At approximately 3 a.m., nearly 2 days after he was last seen by his mother, Rene Leia appeared at the doorstep of a stranger's home in Gilbert, Arizona. Gilbert is a neighboring city to Mesa, located a considerable distance away for someone simply out for a walk, especially someone unfamiliar with the area. When Rene arrived at the stranger's door, he was reportedly dehydrated and in a confused state. Recognizing his distress, the homeowner made the responsible decision to call the police. Responding officers arrived and, observing Rene's condition, transported him to Maricopa County Hospital for much-needed medical treatment. At this point, a critical disconnect occurred. The hospital staff, while providing care for Rene's dehydration and confusion, were apparently unaware that he had been reported as a missing person in the nearby city of Mesa. This lack of information sharing between jurisdictions or systems would prove to have significant consequences for the investigation into Rene's disappearance. While at the hospital, Rene communicated to the staff that he resided in Sonora, Mexico. Following his treatment, a social worker, acting in what they believed to be in Rene's best interest to return home, purchased him a ticket for a Greyhound bus. Rene was then dropped off at the bus station, presumably with the understanding that he would be traveling back towards the border and eventually to Sonora. However, the information regarding Rene's journey after boarding the bus is limited and based on the account of the bus driver. The driver reported that Rene Leia got off the bus in Nogales, Arizona. Nogales is a city situated directly on the border between Arizona and Mexico. This was the last known location where Rene Leia was seen. Since that time, he has never been heard from again by his family or authorities. The circumstances surrounding his initial disappearance in Mesa, his subsequent appearance in Gilbert, his treatment at the hospital, and his final known location in Nogales raised numerous unanswered questions. The reasons for his confusion and dehydration, his journey from Mesa to Gilbert, and his actions after getting off the bus in a border town remain a mystery. Tragically, Rene Leia's mother has since passed away, never knowing the fate of her son. His disappearance remains an unsolved case, a poignant reminder of the vulnerabilities faced by individuals in unfamiliar surroundings, particularly those with potential medical needs or in a state of confusion. The lack of a clear narrative and the multiple locations involved have likely complicated the efforts to determine what ultimately happened to Rene Leia after he stepped off that bus in Nogales, Arizona, over 3 decades ago. In the year 1986, the University of Arizona in Tucson was home to a young, ambitious student named Lauren Landine. With his sights set on a future as an athletic trainer, Lauren was diligently pursuing his education and seemingly on the cusp of a promising career. However, his life took an unforeseen and tragic turn on January 20, 1986, the day he was last seen departing from his apartment in Tucson, Arizona. Authorities pieced together that Lauren had likely intended to go for a jog in the picturesque Sabino Canyon area, a popular natural recreation spot near the city. Sadly, he never returned from this outing, and no one has heard from him since that day. The initial hours and days following Lauren's disappearance were filled with growing concern, which soon escalated into a full-blown missing person investigation. 2 days after he was last seen, on January 22, 1986, a significant and unsettling discovery was made. Lauren's vehicle was found locked and abandoned in the parking lot of Sabino High School. This location was not immediately adjacent to his apartment but was situated in a way that could align with a potential route towards or near Sabino Canyon. The fact that the car was locked suggested that Lauren had likely secured it before proceeding elsewhere. Inside the vehicle, investigators found Lauren's wallet, containing his identification and presumably his personal effects. His keys were also inside the car, with one notable exception: the ignition key was missing. This detail hinted that Lauren had driven the car to the high school parking lot and then taken the ignition key with him when he left on foot. However, beyond the presence of his locked car and the absence of the ignition key, there was no other discernible evidence of Lauren Landine at the scene. The lack of any clear indication of Lauren's direction of travel from the Sabino High School parking lot left investigators with a perplexing puzzle. Adding a layer of potential insight, Lauren's mother reported that search dogs, brought in to try and pick up his scent, indicated that Lauren's scent lingered near his vehicle, suggesting that he had indeed departed from that location on foot. However, the dogs were unable to track a definitive path beyond the immediate vicinity of the car, leaving his ultimate destination unknown. In a unique and determined effort to find any trace of her son, Lauren's family embarked on a nationwide attempt to track his distinctive eyeglass lens prescription. They reasoned that if Lauren had obtained a new pair of glasses after his disappearance, it might provide a clue to his whereabouts. They contacted optometrists across the United States, hoping to find a match for Lauren's specific prescription. Despite their diligent efforts, this unconventional approach yielded no results, and no similar pair of eyeglasses was ever located. Years passed without any solid leads in Lauren's case. However, his relatives received a hopeful, albeit ultimately unconfirmed, tip from the Salvation Army's Missing Person Services. This tip suggested that an individual resembling Lauren Landine may have been sighted in El Paso, Texas, sometime after 1986. Driven by the possibility that this sighting could be genuine, Lauren's family traveled to El Paso to investigate. Unfortunately, by the time they arrived at the location where the individual had reportedly been seen, he had already departed. Despite their efforts to gather more information and potentially locate this person, the tip was never definitively confirmed, and it remains an unverified lead in the case. The passage of time, coupled with the lack of any substantial evidence or contact from Lauren, led to the difficult but necessary legal proceedings to declare him legally deceased during the 1990s. This legal declaration, while providing a sense of closure in some respects, did little to alleviate the enduring mystery surrounding his disappearance. The question of what happened to Lauren Landine after he left his locked car at Sabino High School on that January day in 1986 continues to haunt his family and remains an unsolved missing person case. It is worth noting that some agencies may list January 21, 1986, as the date of his disappearance, potentially reflecting some ambiguity in the exact timeline of when he was last definitively seen before his car was discovered. The tranquility of a Tucson, Arizona morning on May 1, 2018, was shattered by the sudden disappearance of Sachiko Mccur. The 58-year-old was last seen at approximately 8 a.m. from the residence she shared in the 3900 block of South Amber Rock. This home was a relatively new chapter for Sachiko and her husband, James. They had recently relocated from Hesperia, California, to provide crucial support for their daughter, Jenny, who was bravely undergoing treatment for cancer in Tucson. The move was a testament to their deep familial bond and their commitment to Jenny's well-being during a challenging time. The events that unfolded on May 1st took a sinister turn when Jenny's estranged husband, Norman Schrank III, forcibly abducted both Jenny and Sachiko from their home. This act of violence thrust the family into immediate crisis. 2 days later, on May 3, 2018, authorities located Schrank at a cabin he had rented in the remote area of Pine, Arizona. With him was Jenny, who, despite being bound and injured, was alive. However, there was no sign of Sachiko Mccur at the scene. Her whereabouts remained unknown, casting a dark shadow over Jenny's rescue. Jenny, who was blind, was unable to provide a visual account of what had happened to her mother. She recounted the terrifying ordeal of the abduction, stating that Schrank had made several stops during their journey. One particular stop was at a storage unit, where she distinctly heard the sound of him opening a combination lock. This detail would later become significant in the investigation. Upon their arrival at the cabin in Pine, Schrank left Jenny alone in an upstairs bedroom. Throughout the night, he was reportedly in and out of the cabin multiple times, his activities concealed from Jenny's limited sensory perception. Following his apprehension, Norman Schrank III was arrested and faced a multitude of serious charges directly related to the kidnappings of Sachiko and Jenny. During questioning, Schrank confessed to abducting both women. He chillingly admitted to placing a plastic bag over Sachiko's head, claiming that his sole intention was to talk to his estranged wife. The backdrop to this tragic event was the fact that Jenny had filed for divorce from Schrank earlier in 2018, indicating a period of significant personal turmoil within the family. The investigation into Sachiko's disappearance quickly escalated. Several days after Schrank's arrest, he was formally charged with Sachiko's murder. The litany of charges against him painted a grim picture of the events that transpired. These charges included second-degree burglary, 2 counts of kidnapping, 1 count of first-degree murder, aggravated assault, theft of a vehicle, and the charge of abandoning or concealing a dead body. The weight of these accusations underscored the authorities' firm belief that Sachiko had met a violent end at the hands of Schrank. However, the pursuit of justice and the search for Sachiko took an unexpected and tragic turn on May 16, 2018. Norman Schrank III was found unresponsive in his jail cell, bringing an abrupt end to the legal proceedings against him. Despite his death, investigators remained convinced of his guilt in Sachiko's murder. Their focus shifted to locating Sachiko's remains, with the vicinity of Pine, Arizona, where Schrank and Jenny were found, being considered a likely area. The stop at the storage unit during the abduction also presented a potential location of interest. Despite extensive search efforts in and around the Pine area and investigations into Schrank's activities, Sachiko Mccur's remains have never been found. The circumstances surrounding her abduction, Schrank's confession to harming her, and his subsequent death have led authorities to strongly suspect foul play. The lack of a body, however, continues to leave a painful void for Sachiko's family and hinders the complete closure of this tragic case. The hope remains that one day, evidence will surface that will lead to the discovery of Sachiko's remains, providing some measure of peace for her loved ones who have endured years of uncertainty and grief.